week's podcast is going to look at some horses that all have particular problems. Now, problems isn't a word that I normally like to associate with horses because they all just have different, things that they need to have help with, support with. But these particular areas are quite tricky, so that's why I've used the word problems, and I think they're going to be really interesting for you to listen to. Hello, welcome to Mark Langley's Horsemanship Podcast, a podcast helping people to understand their horses better, to provide solutions in a calm, connected way. I'm Jenny Langley.
And I'm Mark Langley.
So, Mark, the first question is from Kimberly, and she has a really young horse who she's struggling with loading and moving around in her trailer. Now, he is only 4 years old, but he's been with people since he was 4 months old. He's well used to a whole lot of things. He's broken to saddle, he rides in trail and in the arena. Previously, he's loaded on the trailer absolutely fine. He's very confident, but he is, if anything, a little bit of a pushy horse. But in the last few weeks, he's getting harder and harder to load. Now, to Kimberly, it seems like he has a lot to deal with his emotions, and she describes them as tantrums that are getting harder to control. So he's pawing at the tie rail. It looks like it might be a bit of a patience issue. He's squealed. He's even striked at the pole for holding him there. And she's losing a little bit of confidence with this horse because he was described to her as having sort of been quite a quiet nature and gentle. So she's wondering if you've got any tips for her for helping this particular horse with his temper tantrums.
A lot of times we handle horses to make them quiet, but I would like to say that we handle horses with education, so we're constantly getting them to think, search, understand boundaries, and handing responsibility to them right from a young age. And a lot of horses that come out with all these behaviours and, they're getting pushy around people, they don't know boundaries and stuff like that, then you kind of know that they become very accustomed to people, but there's been no challenges, no problems they've had to solve, and no responsibility put back to them. Also, there could be, because you've taken him on board from a rehomer, maybe they sort of relied on having him a bit shut down and subdued in a more sort of mechanical environment. I mean, an arena environment with small yards, paddocks and things like that, and then you've taken him on board and he's starting to open up, but he hasn't, some horses in a shut down state come out and they're nervous of people. Some are actually a bit the opposite. They're pushy. They're not so worried about people, but yet they still were sort of shut down and semi-obedient, I suppose, in their environment before they go to a new home. So if he's opening up, he's basically opening up, and you're finding out all the things that he didn't learn or wasn't aware of, okay? So the float issue, sometimes it's like the trailer float issue, once bitten, twice shy. So sometimes horses can have 2 or 3 okay travellings in a trailer, and then they suddenly open up and go, I'm really terrified of this place and I don't know what to do, because those other times it might have been with other horses, or they're fairly subdued, fairly sort of just shut down and just not really thinking about making a mistake. They were just kind of hiding away in a bit of a shell.
So by shut down, do you mean that they've followed instructions, they're being compliant, but in the inside they're really just going, I'm not sure what to do, so I'm just going to not do anything? Yeah. But then as they get a little bit more confident, and they get a little bit older perhaps too, they sort of go, I'm not really happy with this. Yeah. Is that what you mean?
It's almost like you can imagine an introvert kid in a classroom, and the teacher's not in the classroom, and everyone starts throwing balls of paper at each other, and they're going crazy. And one of the poor introvert kid in the corner, sitting there with his hands over his ears, going la 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 la, just to sort of get away from it because he can't handle that intensity. And then on the third day that the teacher's not there, that kid gets up and just tells everyone to be quiet, I can't handle it anymore, and they suddenly snap. So basically there's so many times, especially when it comes to floating and trailing horses, that they'll go into that la 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 state while they're travelling, and then all of a sudden they have too much of it, and then they come out and that's when they get the pouring in the float and the sweating and the real, where they're really starting to stomp and get frightened and almost overreact to that space. But just going back to the question, he's kind of pushy. A pushy horse doesn't understand boundaries, and usually pushy horses, they can have more curiosity, less caution. So basically caution is the recipe for processing and trying to understand the level of danger in something and then doing something accordingly to that. Curiosity is, I'm interested in that. Now, some horses with a lot of curiosity, that can turn into impulsive behaviour. I want that hay that's in your hand, and I'm going to walk over there and I'm going to get angry at you and I'm going to take it. That is, I want that hay, and I have no caution about how I get it. It'd be like a horse seeing another horse with hay and going, I want your hay, and I'm not cautious, and I'm going to go in there. Next minute that horse kicks it in the leg, breaks its leg. Well, that horse that went and pinched the hay didn't have to get a broken leg if it went, oh, I want that hay, but you look like you like that hay too, and you're a big strong horse, and there's consequences if I do that. So basically, like I said before, like the horse sounds like it's had a lot of handling, but not a lot of processing boundaries, giving them responsibility, stuff like that. So basically, you've got this kind of teenage kid with no boundaries, and a lot of anxiety because of that. Because what happens when a horse doesn't understand its place around people and other horses, and its responsibilities and the boundaries that those other horses and people have, they become very fractious and insecure. Sometimes they can become dominant, aggressive, all sorts of things, because they're just lost in their own mind. So the biggest thing I can say is, firstly, is just create some boundaries and some responsibility with the horse. It could be just standing at a distance quietly until it is quiet and it understands that you have a bubble around you. Your spot is sacred to you, but you're not going to go and chase your horse around to prove it. You're just going to say this place is unavailable, and you'll get as big as you have to when your horse comes into that place without thinking about it, because that is the understanding he needs to be able to be aware of anybody's boundaries, even other horses. Okay, you don't have to make him terrified of you, but you can make that boundary very clear. Okay, and then the other thing is, go back to good quality leading and education, so the horse knows to trust that lead rope. Then with that lead rope and the understanding of boundaries, then you teach the horse to go in to horse trailers in a more cautious way, because he might go in like, maybe he's been taught to self-load. I get so many hundreds of horses come to my clinics that have been taught to self-load, and they just go in the float, and then 2 minutes later they're sweating in a float because they're so terrified, but the owner never has a problem with them loading. But I see them load and go, wow, that horse is just going in there frightened because it knows it has to. It's not. It doesn't even know how to process the float. It just knows that outside's too hard, so I may as well just go into there. And then it carries all that worry inside the horse trailer, and then all of a sudden that's what you got driving down the road. So I would slow down the way he loads and put more emphasis on the way he leads, and then let him stop at different places in the trailer till he gets better at, going in with caution and being able to move around in there softly, move around, know where your boundaries are, lead him all the ways to whatever end of that horse float or trailer you can move him around to, back into, move him over to, so he knows how to, just about do soft ballet inside that trailer. So he's very comfortable at movement and being able to move and touch all the sides of that. And then they get a lot more comfortable in there. But basically, he just sounds like he needs good proper education.
So are those tantrums really sort of tantrums as we see them? As in, he's just had enough and he's cross about things. How would you see it?
Well, it says there's a bit like, so you see, and we shouldn't humanise things when we talk about horses, but I do, because I see a lot of links between what a horse does and what a human does. So, sometimes we see a tantrum as, in children as either being spoilt, but then a lot of tantrums that people have had, kids that have had tantrums, are because they had a build-up of anxiety and they didn't know how to process it, so then all of a sudden it builds up and they just explode and they just don't know what to do about it. And a lot of tantrums in horses come from a build-up of anxiety and not being able to process that properly, and it can come out as a tantrum where they're really stomping, or they can come out as aggression or flight or even freeze. So basically, it's being able to process things, and like I say to people, like the best way to create a soft horse is through problem solving, and to create a good mind in a horse is through problem solving. So you've got to set up little problems for that horse to solve, and they solve them themselves.
Oh, they solve them, not us solve them.
Yeah, they solve them. So like a simple problem is, I don't know where to stand quietly. Okay, well just stand on that, just not stand on the rope, stand with the rope. No, but I've got to look over there, but that's not available. Oh, so what do I got to do? Just have a quiet mind and stand in this place. And then when the horse finds that place, it goes, oh, this is not a bad place because my mind's not going around at 100 miles an hour and I'm not getting anxious about everything. But that was a little problem. They had to figure it out. That's not working. This is not working. Oh, this is working. And whereas a lot of times horses have never been taught to solve problems, we carry them all the time and micromanage. And then all of a sudden, when they're inside a trailer on their own, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to solve it. They don't know how to regulate their anxiety and things like that.
Just really quickly, because I know this is such a big area, and Kimberly, there's going to be a lot for you to look into with this. So you thought this was simple, it's not. But if you can bear with us, and we're happy to support you along your journey with this. We know you're new to the membership, but if you can sort of start to bite off pieces of training that you can tackle, you're going to end up with a horse that's really going to be showing that nice nature that you are after. Mark, I just wanted to get very briefly, before we move on to the next question, your thoughts on whether, because obviously she's concerned, she's gone out of her way to help a rescue horse that doesn't need to be tied up with lots of baggage. Do you think, considering he's only 4, what's the chances of her being able to help him?
There's so many lost 4-year-olds that come to clinics that seem like they're kind of 8-year-olds with all these problems, but it's not the case. Like I've had horses like that at a clinic, and just like Jenny was saying, you pick, you pick a piece or something like that, and I'll pick one piece. I'll look at the most important red flag, and I'd say, if I was standing with your horse right now, I'd say your horse looks a bit lost. He doesn't know where to be. He's looking over there. He's not comfortable in himself. I'm just going to work on interrupting his thought every time he gets a strong thought elsewhere until he starts to go, oh, I can just stand here quiet and present. And I might do that every day for a couple of days. And then when I've got a horse that knows how to stand quiet and present, then I know, well, okay, he's in a better mindset to teach. Oftentimes nobody works on those simple things long enough till the horse understands that it's their responsibility. And we like, I think we did a little newsletter, just yesterday we did, and it was about, we do 5 things, but the horse doesn't know any one of those things. So we just fill the gap with our ability. We'll pick one thing and just teach your horse to do that one thing until you can turn around, text on your phone, do something else, and turn around and your horse still understands that it's okay, that it can still do that thing, and it understands that you're not doing it for the horse all the time. And then when you do, you pick one thing, you pick another thing, and then by the time you've done 3 things and the horse understands those 3 things, you might be looking at a completely different horse, and you go, wow, this horse is going to be trainable.
Fantastic. Good luck, Kimberly. And like I said, we're here, so you can always reach out to us various ways through the membership so that we can keep guiding you. Moving on from a horse then that perhaps has a little bit too much confidence, not enough caution, to one that is lacking in confidence. This question comes from Sweden, from Miriam. She has a horse that now dreads and hates training. She's found that as soon as you enter the arena, she can feel her horse thinking, oh no, not this again. And she's finding that the horse's attention really is focusing on things that it likes, would rather be doing, like the grass. And she's also noticing that a horse can get quite itchy. So again, another form of distraction, which I'm sure you're going to comment on. So she's thinking that this horse is destinating, still obedient, but then there's this low grade of anxiety inside of the horse, which is just shown as perhaps is struggling to stand still, and sort of perhaps relaxing for only a short space of time. So it doesn't take much to reset the horse. It can react to the flag, but she's finding that she's having to bump a little bit harder than she's comfortable with, and she'd like to hear your thoughts on how she might be able to approach the training to help this horse not perhaps feel so negative.
Yeah, interesting. First, before I completely sort of answer the question, I suppose, interesting kind of subject, and I think some people could correct me if this is the right word or not. I think it's called displacement behaviour. So, going back to humanising things, oh no, I've got to go and do that. That's going to be a terrible job. I don't really want to do that. Ooh, Facebook Marketplace. It's almost like you do something else. So what horses do when they're anxious about something. Some horses focus on what they're anxious about, try and process it, and over focus on it. So sometimes you get these horses that over focus on where the danger is, what the problem is, stuff like that. Then you get other horses that any sign of kind of danger, threat, whatever, they go to a happy place, or they disconnect from that thing and connect to another thing. So those type of horses are the ones that usually have this more extreme, noticeable separation anxiety and stuff like that. So, I'm going to walk across the stream. Stream's scary, but that grass near the stream is green. I'm just going to eat the grass, and I'm going to do that instead. And they're the horses that get that real strong addictive behaviours. That type of mindset will end up being the wind suckers, the crib biters. Have those like the addictions, food anxiety, angry around food because that's their happy place, and all this other stuff bothers them. Okay, so I'm not saying other horses won't get it, but it's just like they don't like that, so they think about that instead. So what you're doing is right. You're trying to get them to say. So what I would say firstly is you don't bite off like just like I talked about in the last question. Pick one thing and get it right. And with those horses, that one thing could be standing at a distance on a rope and just saying, let go of the fact that you think I'm going to do something and I'm going to come in and show you something. By not doing a lot yourself, don't go and plan a lesson and go and work with them. Just plan on improving their mindset, just one thing. So that one thing could be just standing quietly on a 3 or 4 metre rope. And that's just a lesson with a rope. I mean, you can go in at liberty and just work on the horse, and every time you walk towards it and it disconnects, you might just interrupt that thought. As soon as that horse's thought comes back a little bit, you just might wander off and do something else, not even worry about it too much, and just say the first thing I want you to do when I walk into the arena or the yard is just let go of the fact that you need to think away from me, because I'm going to do something to you. So as soon as the horse focuses off and destinates, or you interrupt it, but then as soon as you interrupt it, you just leave it alone and do something else and say, all I need you to do is draw your thoughts across to me for a little bit, and see, nothing's going to happen. It's okay. You can do that. And you just focus on recreating a new neuro pathway. Just hit that same neuro pathway again and again and again. And there was a traumatized horse in the States that I worked, which was the Pasofino horse. And I went through a few experiments during the clinic to find out what's going to be the best way to help this horse in the long term, or help the people help the horse. And I said, at liberty, the horse has already been taught to kind of hook on a little bit. You can tell it wants to do that. It wants to follow me around. But it actually, as soon as I walk away, it just goes back to pacing again. So it's only doing that because it thinks it's pleasing me and avoiding pressure. So I said, how about we just walk up, get it to let go of that thought. And when it let go of pacing and thought towards me, then I just left it alone. And then I did that, and I tried to hit that same note 20, 30, 40, 50 times. So as soon as I walk up to the horse lets go of pacing, thinks across to me, and then I leave it alone. Until after a while, the horse would stand longer and go, oh, I can just stand, and I can walk around in here and sniff the ground and do my own thing. Because what you got to show these horses is that them bringing their attention to you is not you taking something off them, it's giving them something back. So you're not actually, so that's why I've got to use my words correctly here. I'm not saying focus on me, I'm just saying let go of that. Let go of that destination that you and then as soon as the horse lets go of it, you go and do something else. And they say, oh, well, what do you want me to do? And I say, I don't want you to do anything. I just want you to let go of thinking that me walking to you means destinate. And just do it over and over again. And even if you don't do anything with the horse for a week or two, till she goes, oh, righto, you just walked in. I don't have to hyper-focus somewhere else because there's the pressure of what's going to happen next coming and nothing happened next. Oh, I feel comfortable now. Then the next thing that might happen is you might go up and touch her and she might go, what are you going to touch me for? You're going to put a hold on and lunge me? You're going to educate me? You go, no, I just want to touch you just to make sure you haven't got fleas. And I'm going to go now, bye. And you just leave her alone. And she's going to go, oh, right, that's all you wanted to do with me. Maybe this is different. Now, you're not going to spend your whole life doing that, but you've got to start to sort of set up that her displacement behaviour or her thinking somewhere else is not available, but because she brings her attention to you, it doesn't mean you're going to do something to her. You're just going to give her space to go, it's okay to be present around me. That's all I want. And because you've hit that neuro pathway enough times, it starts to become a new her, and then you can start to think about the education you do after that.
Wow.
I wouldn't go too far on her till she's a bit more present and interested, and not so in the future in mind by thinking this is what people have done and you're going to do it too.
Yeah. And sort of how long does it take to get the shift in a horse like that?
Well, it just depends the depth of the trouble. Like, you know, the Pasifino horse, I was like, well, I had an estimate. I reckon if I had it and I was doing that for a week, that just walk up, then I had an estimate that I could stand in a yard with that horse and it could stand at a distance and just wander around and just be comfortable in itself without needing to follow me, without needing to hook onto something else. And I estimated if we did that for just 5 or 6 days in a row, I was thinking that horse would start to just go, I can be comfortable for 10 minutes without, you know, thinking someone's going to do something to me.
Gosh. Wow.
You know, or you know, and once they hit 10 minutes, you know that they're in that space, because if a horse can do something for 10 minutes, well, it could probably do it for an hour.
You can just expand it.
Yeah.
Well, Miriam, that will get you thinking. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. I laugh a little bit because Miriam's a trainer, so we like sort of helping her as well. We like helping everybody, but yes, it's one for her to think about. So next question is from Carol, who has an adjustment centre up in top of Australia. And in her adjustment centre, she likes to be able to catch horses at any time, anywhere, but without treats. Now, she has a bit of a hypothetical question for you, Mark, but she's encountered horses occasionally that when they don't get a treat to get caught, perhaps can start to display aggression. So what she's found is that, you know, new horse comes to a place, it's used to treats, she doesn't do treats, so they give her these sort of aggressive signals. So the head can go up, the ears might pin back, the eyes might go hard, and she sees the mouth tighten. Now, she's normally sort of works with these over time, and she finds that she can, you know, eventually get to catching them. But she wants to just check that she's on the right track, because she's finding that these aggressive horses, the ones that turn to aggression when she's not giving them a treat, she finds that they'll often move away, and then she'll go and catch them again, and the level of aggression will escalate. She has found that horses can threat to bite her, and she has actually been bitten, and she's even been struck at. She knows how to stay out of the way, but she's just would like to know, how would you tackle this problem? She knows it can be difficult, and she knows it can take time to achieve the goal that she wants, but what would your approach be?
Yeah, with a horse like that moving into a herd, and the horse has obviously been caught with treats. So the problem, like when people start to use treats, firstly for everyone, why not to use treats, okay? Why do we use treats? Well, I guess people kind of want to make the horse feel that we can give them something good, so it's worth coming to us because it's a good thing and they get something out of it. And, you know, treats here and there aren't the biggest problem in the world as long as you're not treating a troubled horse. Now, this, by the sounds of it, this horse has to be treated to be caught because it carries trouble. Why has it got trouble? I dare say because of the way it's been trained and the way it perceives training and people and the way they train them and lack of clarity and stuff like that, that the horse is bothered by that. So because the horse is bothered by all that, it knows what it knows. It knows what it likes. And when you... And I guess the biggest problem with treats is treat withholding. So if you withhold treats to a horse that has a troubled mind, then you're like withholding, the drugs to an addict that has a gun. That's what's happening. So that's why they get all upset. So basically, Carol, you're very right to not catch that horse with treats and take treats out of the equation because the horse has too much internal trouble around people. Now, it could be a bully, bossy kind of feeling horse around other horses. If you sort of notice that horse being like that with other horses, it's in its temperament to sort of take control of situations and be a little like that. The biggest thing I can say is take catching the horse in the herd out of the equation right now. There's no quick fix on that. The best thing you can do when you go out there is just hold your ground and make sure your bubble's impenetrable and don't catch him. So, I would probably, I'll go out in a herd situation. I'd have whatever flag or whatever, something I could sort of say, hey, and I'd walk up to the horse, and walk straight up to it. And when it shows that aggression, what do you want to do? And it sort of steps up to me with that aggression. I do something big enough to disrupt it and say that I do it at a distance before it's too close to me, in any striking distance of a mouth or a foot or anything like that. And I'd say, let go of that. And the horse would go, what? And then when I see it, let go of that thought and go, even if it walked off, I'd just wander off in a new direction. And I'd say, I'm not interested in you. I just wanted to see if I could walk towards you. That's all I wanted to do. I don't really want to catch you. And then I'd go back again and I'd walk up as soon as I see any hardness and that sort of, I'd just walk past the horse and I see that hardness, I'd do something, say, let go of that hardness and it might shake it off and get a bit of a worry, and then I'd just leave it alone, walk away, do something else. And just spend the time just being able to walk around the horse. But as I say, when you do something, it has to be effective enough to shock the horse out of what it was thinking it was going to happen or whatever, and then you have to be effective at walking away and saying, I don't really want to go up and catch a horse like you because you're still upset. You still got all these troubles. If you come into my herd, you've got to go by my rules, which are we're all happy. We're happy. I'm a happy person, and when you come into my space, I'm going to deal with a happy horse, not an angry, cooped up horse. So if he approaches you at all with any of that hardness or trouble, just let go of that thought and then just leave him go alone, do something else until he starts to recognise that that's not working and you weren't going to go and catch him anyway, so he doesn't have to anticipate that or what's going to happen next, and maybe over time he'll soften and he might just walk up to you softly and curious. If he ever shows any softness and curiosity, now curiosity has to be with caution, so if it's a soft curiosity where he's coming up going, I wonder if I come up to her softly, then you might wait a little bit and say, well, that's nice, mate, just looking at me nice like that and wondering if I've got any feelings about how you walk up to me is nice. Then you might wait a little and then, reach out. But if you reach out to him, you reach right out, so your feet are back here and you're reaching out like a horse should reach out with a long sniff, because they know they're not allowed into the space, but they're going to reach their nose up just to check if it's okay.
Yeah, I've watched horses come up to you and you've gone, no. I don't come up to me like that, when you come up thoughtfully.
Yeah.
And you've corrected them.
Yeah.
So that's
every horse needs to be corrected in a sense of if they're not coming up to us thoughtfully, even a foal. And we don't make it personal. We just do what we need to do to say that's no, thoughtfully. So we teach horses thoughtfulness right from when they're young. And that's the problem. We get these horses now that I guess have these troubles inside them. They lack caution. And then because they have troubles and they're hard to catch, we give them a treat. We're just really stirring up a dangerous concoction there when that happens. The other thing, Carol, I'd also sort of try and if you've got the agistment center for everybody. I know Carol. She's been around horses all her life, and I read the question. I had a chuckle to myself because she says, "And I know how to get out of the way of a horse." And it's interesting because Carol lost her eyesight over 5 minutes, so she's probably only got maybe, I don't know, could be only 2 to 5% vision. And when she said that, she still has that feel around horses that she knows.
She's still got it.
She's still got it. So I chuckled, So anyway, but yeah, so basically, whoever owns the horse, when they work the horse, they need to start to sort of create, like I was talking with the last few horses, clear boundaries, and don't ask a lot of the horse until the horse is in a soft mindset, and create that 3 or 4 meter bubble where the horse just has to stand out there quietly. Show them that when you're talking to someone else that you don't need to interact with them, and teach them what body language looks like in the sense of, I'm not communicating with you now, so you don't need to come and, mug me or do this or come and sniff me. Now I'm turned around. Oh, hello. Can I talk to you?
It's almost like we need a rule book of the rules of human engagement. This is what's appropriate and this is what's not.
Yeah. The hardest thing that, teaching people is there's a book on how we should engage with horses. And I think people think, we've all learned about bubbles and how a horse should interrupt our space. But there is another line of, okay, this is how we listen to a horse and understand their language. And then there's the other thing is this is how a horse understands just the normal language around people. Because I see a lot of people being real heavy on their horses, but they never taught them to understand our language.
Yeah.
And because they don't understand, they're lost. So then we keep saying, don't do this, when all we had to do was say, just do this instead.
And for anyone out there thinking, yes, where is that book, Mark? Don't worry, I am onto it. It's going to come out. There's so much that he knows that we've got to put out there. Okay, we'll move on to the next question. And this is an under saddle question, so a little bit different and nonetheless just as complex. It's from Lisa, and she has an 8-year-old crossbred mare who's generally very sweet and willing and brave and forward moving, but she's also very sensitive to cues and can get a little anxious when she's out riding. A couple of times, and this is the problem that she wants to iron out, she's done just a small buck when transitioning from trot to canter. She has had only limited amount of education, and she's been doing a bit of work developing her top line to help build her strength and balance. She's wondering if perhaps she feels out of balance in the transition, and that's why she's bucking. She's not really sure though. Now, Lisa doesn't want to do hours and hours of circle work with her. She would like to pick your brains instead, Mark, on ideas that they can help build up their strength and balance in the transitions. Perhaps also at the same time reduce her anxiety around the transition. And I'm sure you've got a comment to make on linking those two.
I do hear the term out of balance a lot. The horse is out of balance. That's why it's getting worried in the canter. And then you watch the same horse canter up a paddock and go, well, I had no problems going to the canter without a rider. So obviously he's carrying a rider, which is, obviously an extra thing. And there is a lot of, different anxieties that can come in because of carrying a rider at speed. But if the horse in general, if you can see it canter, like on the ground, if you can see it go from trot to canter and it kind of does it okay, then in general, it's not out of balance. What makes a horse out of balance when we ride it? Well, sometimes the anxiety makes the horse think towards its friends because it's confused about certain things. And because it's thinking to its friends and we want it to canter over there, then it's leaning that way in its thoughts and everything's going in different directions. So then we have what I would call balance issues, but it's not the balance. It's more so the horse's mind's somewhere else and we're steering it in a different direction. What causes its mind to be somewhere else? External environmental problems, buckets, areas of the arena that's scared of, bushes, whatever, that's making it want to go somewhere else, or the anxieties that we can control with our tools. Okay, so going back to transition, what is the tool that you ask your horse to canter with? Do you click your fingers once? Do you say canter? Do you whistle? Do you use your leg? Do you tap it with a stick? What is your whatever, you know? I'm not trying to say... we have to look at what we use to ask for the canter. And that's what I always say to people. What do you use to ask for canter? Most commonly, and I'm going to go back to the one I use and encourage you to use that, because most commonly the area where horses have a bit of trouble and start to feel like they're out of balance or suck back or do anything is when we squeeze them a bit more to canter. Okay, so...
She did say that she's very sensitive to cues.
Yes. So sensitive, does that mean soft or just sensitive? So sensitive could mean light and troubled. So sensitive, you know, if it's a soft, sensitive horse, then you should squeeze it and it'll go faster, easily. Okay? So test the rib cage again, and just what I say to people who are having a bit of trouble of going to the canter, I'd say do an experiment in a walk. Can you do a slow walk? Squeeze into a slow walk, squeeze into a fast walk, squeeze, you know, or come back into a medium walk, or squeeze from a standstill to a medium walk, or squeeze from a standstill to a fast walk. And at a certain squeeze, the horse just goes into that nice and easily, like really nice and easily, but not worried. Now, when you let the horse off, is it worried? Does it keep going faster because it's escaping the legs? Or is there a dull spot where it sucks back a little bit? Can you go from a standstill to a jog? Can you go from a standstill to a fast trot with the squeeze of your legs? Is your horse receptive, responsive to that? So if you can do that, you can squeeze the horse up into speed and there's no wiggling, wobbling. The other thing is, on a loose rein, if you squeeze your horse and it turns off through one eye or the other more than, you know, one eye more than the other, especially when you put more leg on it, then you know that it's getting anxious enough to go through its strong focus eye and lead out to the side, which is going to cause problems in the canter, especially if you're wanting to canter off to the right, and every time you squeeze it, the horse goes through its left eye more. Because the more anxiety in the legs, the more anxiety in the horse, the more the horse goes to its leading side of its brain, which then will look out the leading window, which could be the left or right eye. Okay, so all those things you have to sort of take into sort of account when a horse goes into canter. So, but I would go back to, is the horse aware of my legs, and can I push it up incrementally, faster, things like that. And if you can go from a standstill within not a lot of time at all, like seconds, you can be into a, not even second, you can be into a fast trot with the legs, but you can also use the legs quietly to sneak and then sneak a little faster, so the horse understands the amount of pressure so well. Then basically, if you can go from a standstill to a fast trot, that amount of pressure that you've done, which shouldn't be a lot of pressure, to get to the fast trot, then you would go from a fast walk, put that pressure on, and you should technically go from a fast walk to a canter, because you could go from a standstill to a fast trot with that amount of pressure. And then I would slow the horse down, and I wouldn't go from a trot to a canter. I'd get the accelerator working better. The only time I go from a trot to a canter on a young horse is for the first so many rides, when I let them trot and just keep trotting with my seat up faster until I gently drop into a canter. But some horses trot very fast, so by the time they're trotting so fast, you're almost faster than the canter you want to go anyway, because they're going so fast. So you wouldn't want to be doing that. So I would rather you would not go from a trot to canter, go from a walk to a canter. And if you can't go from a walk to a canter, then your accelerator's probably not working enough to push your horse through. And from a walk, you're going to be sitting nicely, and you squeeze up into that canter, and you just squeeze them through the trot up to canter, kind of bypass that trot if you can. And because I like to keep the trot as a trot, not trot canter. Okay, but I definitely go back through the leg transitions, and if you're really concerned and you want a bit more confidence in the ribs, then belly rope. Go back to a belly rope. Use the belly rope to squeeze forward, and you can get them to canter up from a trot to a canter on a rope, from a walk to a canter, and even from a standstill to a canter through a belly rope if you want to. And that'll really help them.
So Lisa, those areas are all covered on with the training videos online, so you can just look through, you can just put in a word in the search bar for transition, and it will come up with a lot of videos specifically for helping horses that are transitioning from that trot to canter. That you can also, there's videos on the belly rope. You can put in belly rope in the search bar, or you can find them in the leading videos. They're in there. So both of those areas you might want to look into to give you some ideas to help. And it sounds like once you get on top of it and you can help with her anxiety in this transition, you're going to help with other areas as well. So good luck with that one. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much, Mark. Thanks for all the questions that have come through.
Thanks, Jenny. Thank you, everybody.
We'll talk to you again next week. If you'd like to ask Mark your question and get his insights to help you and your horse, it's easy to join Mark Langley online. Head over to marklangley.com.au and hit join. It's less than a couple of coffees, and the Q&A is just a piece of a whole package designed to support you and your horse with great training.